I created this account because I'm afraid. Not of them, of people. I know how this sounds. I know what most people will think when they hear this story. They'll think I'm crazy, looking for attention, or making something up on the internet. That's why I'm hiding behind a throwaway account. Because if I told people who I really was, nothing good would come from it. The truth is, I've been taken by them since I was 12 years old. The first time it happened was 1987. And the strangest thing about it is that abducted isn't really the right word, because you don't get dragged away, you don't get forced, you go willingly. That might sound impossible, but it's the truth. They somehow make you feel like everything is okay. You know it's frightening. You know something impossible's happening right in front of you, but at the same time, you feel calm. Almost like you understand that you're safe. It's only later, after everything is over, that the fear starts to creep in. That's when you begin thinking about what happened. That's when you start feeling like something was taken away from you. Like you were violated. The first time they came for me, I was 12 years old. It was around 8:30 at night. I was in my backyard. My mother was away on a business trip, and my father was inside the house. I remember that because when I came back later, he was angry. He had no idea where I'd been. I had no way to explain it. I don't even know how I could have explained it. Because how do you tell someone that two beings from somewhere beyond Earth came and took you somewhere you can't describe? They waited until I was alone. That's something they've always done. They don't just appear in front of everyone. They wait. They choose moments when nobody else is around. The first few times were terrifying, but even then, I somehow knew I was coming home. I never felt like they were going to kill me. I never felt like I was going to be trapped there forever. It was more like going to the hospital. You don't want to go. You're scared. But you know you'll come back. The beings people call the Greys are not actually grey. At least the ones that I've met. They're more of a beige colour. And they're not naked. They wear clothes. They're smaller than humans, but not as small as people usually imagine. They're about the size of a small woman. They have 2 eyes, 2 legs, 2 arms. They look human-like, but they're different. They only have 3 fingers. Long fingers. Strange fingers. There's also something like a thumb, but it's much shorter. Almost like a small stump. They aren't all exactly the same height, but I don't know if that means anything. I don't know if they have males and females like we do. I don't even know if they have genders at all. The 2 that I became closest with told me to call them Jack and Gina. I know those aren't their real names. They just gave me names that I could pronounce. Gina has been around for about the last 10 or 15 years. I can recognise Gina because there's something on the right hand, a mark, almost like a scar. The stories people tell about aliens are mostly Hollywood. People talk about being violently experimented on, about being probed, about being tortured. This isn't what happened to me. They do examine people. They look inside us, but they have ways of doing it that aren't like anything we have. The closest way I can explain it is that the walls themselves are like X-ray machines. Imagine standing inside a room where every wall can see through you. That's the closest comparison. It's not really a machine, it's just the room. Sometimes there were other people there. Sometimes I saw them being examined. Occasionally I saw people lying on tables while people worked on them. Those were the moments when people were usually the most afraid. But most of the time, They weren't doing anything dramatic. They took tissue samples. That happened every time. They didn't put you to sleep. They didn't use anaesthetic. They just did it. The closest comparison I can make is something used to collect samples from the ocean floor. A tiny version of that. They would take small pieces of tissue, usually from the lower back or the butt. They also took hair samples. Sometimes they asked for urine. Once, they asked for a semen sample. But it wasn't like the stories people tell. They didn't force anyone. It was more like a doctor giving you a cup and asking you to provide a sample. If you couldn't do it, they gave you privacy. They also touched me all over before I left. They made me open my clothes. At first I thought it was strange, but I believe that they were checking that I didn't have any of their equipment or tools on me. Most of the time, they talked to me. That was the main thing. Questions, observations. They wanted to know about us. They would show me things, television shows, images, videos, music. They would watch my reaction. I think the walls measure how we responded, like an emotional X-ray. That's only my guess, but that was the feeling I always had. One thing I learnt very quickly: they hate being questioned. You can talk to them, you can answer what they ask, but if you start asking them questions about what they're doing, they don't like it. Even when I became comfortable around some of them, they still avoided answering. They just didn't want to explain themselves. After the first few times, the fear changed. It never completely disappeared. How could it? Every time it happened, something impossible was taking place. But eventually, the panic faded. Now, when it happens, I feel more annoyed than frightened. The biggest problem is that they never tell me when they're coming. I can't plan around it. I can't say, "Can you come next week instead?" It doesn't work like that. They just appear. And somehow, I know when they're close. Usually it starts with technology failing. If I'm driving, my radio stops working. If I'm on the phone, calls stop dropping. At first, I thought it was a coincidence. But after it happened enough times, I knew they were nearby. And when I knew they were there, I stopped fighting it. What was the point? I knew what was happening. I knew I would come back. So I'd pull over, wait, and let it happen. They almost never come to my house. I'm never asleep when it happens. That's something I don't understand about many other abduction stories. A lot of people say they woke up in their bedrooms. I don't believe those stories. That's not how it happened to me. I'm always awake. I'm always somewhere else. If I'm outside, they wait until I'm alone. If I'm running at night, they wait until nobody's around. Then they appear. The first time, when I was 12, they come while I was in my backyard. If they come while I'm at home, they knock at the door. But that only happened once. Usually, one of them approaches me. Sometimes they motion for me to follow. Sometimes they communicate something like, "Hi, it's time for a trip." There are never more than 2 of them on the smaller trips. Gina is always there. At least, she has been for many years. I've never seen the large ship from the outside. I don't know what it looks like. The smaller ships are the ones that come to Earth. They're strange. The closest comparison I can make is a hot dog shape. Almost like a Volkswagen microbus, except slightly bigger. They're not round like people imagine. They're more elongated. The outside has a colour that reminds me of a gunmetal blue. It looks wet, almost glossy. There are no windows, I can't see outside when I'm inside. The inside is just as strange. There are two seats in the middle facing each other. That's where they sit. The back section of the ship is closed off. I can't see what's inside there, but I assume that's where the engines or whatever powers it are located. Around the inside edge is a bench. A hard bench. That's something I've noticed about their technology. Everything seems practical. Nothing is designed for comfort. I've never seen a comfortable chair or soft seat anywhere they've taken me. Everything is flat and hard. The lighting is also strange. There are no lamps, no light fixtures. The light comes from the walls and the floor. There's no radio, no screens, nothing like that. I actually think the smaller ships are controlled remotely. The small ship docks inside the larger one. The back section opens up, and that's where we leave. The smaller ships sit in a series of bays, almost like a docking area. When we walk out, we go through a hallway. That hallway leads into a huge room. It's an area where they work on the smaller ships. There are projects happening there, machines, things I don't understand. I've never explored the entire room. There's one direction we always go, to the right, every time, which makes me think the smaller ship always parks in the same place. To the right is a waiting room. That's where I usually go first. Sometimes there's other humans there. That's where I met some of the other people who have been taken regularly. I wouldn't exactly call them friends. It's much more complicated than that. We don't meet outside of there. We don't live normal lives together. But we've shared something nobody else understands. The waiting room is usually quiet. Most people there are scared. I understand why. Imagine suddenly finding yourself somewhere you never knew existed, surrounded by beings that aren't human. Even after years, it's still unsettling. There are 5 doors leading out of the room. They're arched doorways. They have sliding doors, but they aren't automatic. The aliens have to touch a button to open them. I can open them too. It isn't some kind of fingerprint scanner. 4 of those rooms are examination rooms. That's where they ask the questions. That's where the walls work like X-ray machines. Sometimes they show videos on those walls. Usually though, they ask questions. Beyond those examination rooms is another room that leads into what I can only describe as a medical area. That's one place where people are truly frightened. That's where procedures happen. I've seen people sitting on tables. I've never seen anything like surgery. Nothing like the horror stories people tell. But that room is where they take the samples. They usually explain what they're doing, they don't just surprise you. There's another door on the far side of that room. That leads into another waiting area. That room feels different, more relaxed. There are places to sit. I don't know why, but they always give us hot water. Off that waiting room is where the real conversations happen. That's where they ask questions. That's where they show us things. There's a table in the room. Not a table for examinations. A table where we sit. Usually there are 2 of them there. Not always the same ones. I sit down. They offer me salt. Every time. They make a big deal out of it. Almost like it's a gift. I think they believe humans value salt. Or maybe they believe I value salt. I don't know. I usually smile, taste a little, and move on. Then they show me videos. They ask questions. Sometimes they show me different foods and ask about them. They're fascinated by us, by our culture, by everything we do. There's another area that I haven't talked about much. A hallway with rooms. I guess you could call them dorm rooms. That's where people stay if they're kept longer. The rooms are basic. There are blankets, a toilet bucket, a large tank of water. It's like one of those water coolers humans use, except the water seems to hold itself together naturally. There's no container around it. Sometimes there are books or magazines. There's a flat bench to sleep on, no pillow. It's uncomfortable. If they need you to do something, or if you need anything, they walk you back to the smaller ships. That's how you leave. People ask whether they seem friendly. That's difficult to answer. They're not warm like humans. They're very logical, very controlled. But I think some of them do have feelings, especially Jack and Gina. I've joked with them before. Sometimes they make a sound like they're laughing. I don't know if they actually understand the joke, but they react. Sometimes I look at them and I get the feeling that they feel something. Kindness, maybe sympathy. They don't act like machines, they just don't act like us. If this story kept you listening until the end, don't forget to subscribe and leave a like. We release new videos twice a week, Thursdays and Sundays, between 1800 and 2000 BST. And before you go, the truth is often scarier than fiction.